That's a great question. You want me to answer it in a minute. Okay. Why the brainstem? Why is the brainstem so important? It's a great question because, first of all, people don't see the brainstem as, as being the interesting part of the brain. People generally love the cortex, they love cognitive function, the limbic system and all the emotion and motivation that goes with that. The issue with all those things, and they are very, very important areas of the brain, but the issue is without the brainstem functioning at an optimal level, we're automatically going to have problems with higher order functions that necessarily rely on a well-ordered, well-structured brainstem. They necessarily rely on that area because, number one, the brainstem, and if we have a look at the brainstem here, this area here, it even looks like a plug. Number one, the brainstem is that conduit that allows information to come from the periphery, to come from the outside world, from our environment, from our experiences. It allows that information to be fed into the brain so the brain can interpret, can predict, can understand, can make sense of what's going on. Now, in early life, the variety of experiences we have help us to learn, help us to create these differentiated maps of what different things mean, help us to make sense of how we can take bits of information and put it together. If the brainstem hasn't developed so that that happens, then we rely very heavily on automated reflexive responses, which are geared around largely survival. So we continually loop into this hypervigilance, hypervigilance, hypervigilance. So we have very high levels of stress, very high levels of poor attending, because every time something else happens around us, we've got to see whether that might represent a danger to us. That also has lots of impact on the sorts of chemistry that's going on, and that chemistry not only has an immediate survival role, but it has some quite severe long-term impacts on the ability of the brain and the whole body to actually develop appropriately. So the brainstem is very, very important. Its role: cardiovascular regulation, temperature regulation, as I said, the autonomic stress response regulation, those things, gag, swallow, reflexes like that. Very, very important that they operate appropriately so we can sort of move out of that reflexive response, as I said, and move into higher order function.